Hello and welcome back to Mr. Moher Music, and today we are going to be having a look at the composer Elgar. So this is what I want you to be able to do, that's state some facts about Elgar, and I want you to be able to identify a few key features in his music. So let's get started with Elgar. This is what he looked like. Edward Elgar, he composed during the late Romantic period and the beginning of the 20th century. He's from Worcester in England, well, just outside of Worcester, in a tiny little village. He was born on the 2nd of June 1857 and died on the 23rd of February 1934. And he composed loads of great music, some of which you will have heard of. But the thing I'm thinking of today is his Pomp and Circumstance marches. We're going to just look at the first one of those. But first, let's find out a little bit more about this composer. Well, Elgar's father was a piano tuner. He also had a shop that sold music and instruments. Now, by the time that Elgar was 8, he was playing piano and violin. He started to compose when he was around 10, and the first piece of music that he composed was for a play that he was putting on with his siblings. Now, the piece of music he composed from that still exists today because 40 years later he arranged it for a full orchestra. Now, Elgar had a few jobs. He worked in his father's music shop for a while, and he worked as a solicitor. But by the time he was 22, he took on the role as a conductor and a mentor for a really small orchestra. And he composed little bits of music for them and composed and arranged music from other composers for them to play. And throughout his career he continued to work for different orchestras and different groups of musicians, small groups, large groups, both composing and arranging, as well as playing in those groups. So he did lots of music jobs. So let's have a look at Pomp and Circumstance. So the piece of music we're listening to today was commissioned to be composed for the coronation of Edward VII. Elgar was commissioned to compose for a gala at the Royal Opera House that was to take place on the 30th of June 1902. The king-to-be was confirmed and Elgar began work. He composed his first Pomp and Circumstance march and was then convinced by a singer that he should have some words with it. So, words were composed, they were written, the song was changed slightly so it fitted. And there they had Pomp and Circumstance March number 1, better known now as Land of Hope and Glory. The song was so popular that it then had to be rearranged to be published as a song by itself. It was a really popular song then, and it still is now, and it earned Elgar a knighthood, Sir Edward Elgar. So your task today is in 2 parts, because the first thing I want you to do is just watch the video, because this recording from the last night of the proms is a bit different. Normally when there's an orchestra, the audience sit there in silence and watch and then very politely clap at the end, but it's a little bit different in this. So first thing, watch it. So your first task is a watching task. Watch it, and what strange things do the audience do? They don't just sit there nicely, quietly and watch. They're doing various different things. That's your first task. Your second task is your normal kind of listening task that I would set you. So what's the instrumentation? What instruments can you see? What are the dynamics? Is it loud or quiet? Does it change throughout the piece? And what is the tempo? Fast or slow? Or does it change as the piece goes on? So you really need to watch that because things are starting to change in these pieces now. Now, the piece of music was composed for the concert in celebration of the coronation of King Edward VII. So here's another question that I want you to think about. What makes this piece of music sound like it's for a celebration? So 3 things you might want to think about. 1 are the words that are used. Do they help? There's kind of an opening fanfare played on some of the brass, is it that? Or is it the fact that it's a grand composition, it sounds like a royal piece of music? It's up to you. And the final question I want you to answer in a bit of detail this time is, do you like this piece? Yes or no, and why? Can you tell me why you like it or why you don't like it? So, over to you to have a listen to the first of the Pomp and Circumstances marches by Sir Edward Elgar.